All right, here we are. Wow, what a great day. We're so excited to have everybody here. We're going to wait about another 45 seconds to a minute as I see lots and lots of people joining. We're here with Bob Lanham of Meta, living in the Meta here with Bob, auto retail in the metaverse, which will probably be our next webinar. This webinar, we're going to talk about brand, we're going to talk about privacy, all sorts of cool things. But Bob, we're looking forward to that one.
Although, and some may laugh, but this is absolutely true. I've had a fair number of dealers already message me saying, how can I get involved in the metaverse? So to all you naysayers out there, and listen, man, we're years away from the metaverse.
Who's going to design my Meta vehicle? That's what I want to know, that I can cruise around in. I mean, it's going to be
Listen,
wild.
3 years ago, I'm sitting in the office and these people walk in with like a suitcase, and at the time, you know, when they opened it, it was the Oculus kit, right? Our Oculus, Facebook's Oculus. And they're like, hey man, put this on. And they were a third-party partner that had built off of the Oculus platform for a showroom car walk around experience. And you know, this is 4 years ago, so don't get me wrong, it was a little wonky, but listen, today, that thing would be top of the line. Now, Audi actually put Oculus headsets in all their dealerships, and I think one other brand, I want to say Volvo. So it was, you know, kudos to them for testing it out. And you know, is it the sale of the future? I don't know, man. Like, we got years away from that.
How long ago was that when the Oculus walked in the suitcase?
That had to have been 4 years ago when I saw a demo of and I think if I did a search, I think it was Audi and Volvo. I can't remember exactly which brands, but they put Oculus headsets in each showroom for the point of, hey, we might not have the car on the lot, but put this headset on and we can pick your options so you can see the options in real time, right, as you select them. So
that's fantastic. And are you, and okay guys, we're 1 minute away. I see a bunch more people coming on. We're going to chit chat for another minute. Are you seeing, Bob, a lot of inbound inquiries on the consumer level around, like, is it creating, like, do you still feel like things are pretty flow through from that announcement? Like, is everything pretty much business as usual?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, everyone first, I think, just made fun of the name for whatever reason, I guess. You know, I don't know if it's a weird name or not. I actually think it's fine. I didn't really have any issues with the name. I think people got caught up on the metaverse and didn't read that the fact that, you know, Mark even said it's 5 to 10 years away, and it's not his metaverse, right? It's what people build the metaverse to be. So, you know, and listen, I made a post on LinkedIn, and this is not a ploy to get you all to follow me on LinkedIn, but I made a post on LinkedIn because I found an image from a friend of mine who posted, I don't know if you saw it, it was a gentleman with a boom box, and then like all around him was like a Sony Discman and like a TSR-80 computer, like all this old school stuff. And frankly, the caption said, all of these devices now fit in your pocket.
Right, I saw that.
Right, a video camera, I think he had a video camera in the other hand, right, like an old school one. And when you think about it, you know, I just made a comment like back then, probably 90s, early 90s, maybe late 80s, people were like, no way all of this is going to fit in a pocket. The metaverse is just, you know, the next generation of various things.
I mean, there was that famous Steve Jobs speech when he introduced the iPhone, where he basically said we're putting, you know, 3 things into one. He kind of showed them separately: internet browser, phone, and music player. You know, you got your iPod, and then you have your phone, and you've got your internet browser, which is a different device. Guess what? Here they all are in one. And I think that's clearly that's always the direction that we're going. On that note, okay, we are going to kick, and we're super excited as the host here to have Bob Lanham, who heads automotive retail over at Meta, Facebook. Bob is someone who we love to learn about here at Auto Lead Start, listen to here at Auto Lead Start. He's always thinking about the future. He's always talking about the data. He's trying to understand what actually works, and also trying to simplify things in a way that I think is really important, because the truth of the matter is it's very difficult to get to truth when it comes to the very complex world that we as automotive folks and you as dealers live in. Figuring out what works, how it works, when it works, what's the right move to make when it comes to your marketing, your customer engagement, and kind of where we're going. Bob is a great voice on that. So we wanted to have Bob on, and what we're going to talk about here is a couple of things, and we're going to do it conversationally. Bob's going to kick and run through some slides, but We'll chat. I'll ask questions. You could feed questions into the chat. And Ilana from our team, Ilana, you here? You on audio?
I'm here. I'm playing it behind the scenes today. How ahead?
Okay, so Ilana's here behind the scenes, though usually in front of the.
Woke up 8 minutes ago.
Exactly. Ilana's here. She's ready to roll, and she will be handling all the chat and questions and bring them up. And we're going to also talk as we go forward a little bit about kind of in a world of so much complexity and silos, what does it mean to actually connect things and orchestrate things? And those will be our two themes for the session. With that, I'm going to throw up a quick little agenda, which you can see on the screen. Brand campaigns is going to be kind of our first conversation. We're going to talk about marketing in a privacy-first world. What do you do with your data? What's good with your data? What's not? Then we're going to talk a bit about media mix, which I think is something Bob's been really pioneering for the industry to think about, and it'll raise good questions and insights for you as dealers. So with no further ado, Bob, feel free to introduce yourself, but just kick us off. Let's have some good content.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, no presentation, right? We'll keep this conversational, and these are just talking points and things that I think about, throughout the day. And I appreciate the introduction, man. I really do. I have a huge passion for this space, and I just want us to be the best industry out there. I want college graduates or even high school graduates to say, man, I want to get into the automotive retail space because that is the best space to be in. So, that truly is my mission. So, I wrote an article for Adweek that launched on the 15th, so 2 days ago, and it was on 3 tactics, or we labeled it 3 tactics or 3 musts. And the first one is you have to have a brand. Like, I think there's no more important time than now than to have a brand for your business, brand for yourself, brand for your community, brand anything, right? Like what do you identify as? If someone's talking about you or your business when you're not around, what are they saying about it, right? Like, and that's what I have a passion on. And conversational commerce or just messaging is a customer experience, but a key one, right? And becoming more important. My good buddy Tim Cox from CarNow always says every sale starts with a conversation, right? And it's where do we want to have that conversation, right? We might not be able to do it in person anymore. Maybe people don't want to do it in person anymore. So what platform, and this isn't about Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, it could be texting, right? It could be through a chat provider, it could be, whatever that is. So, and then we got to evolve our measurement. Look, it's not a hey, we should, it's like we have to, it's a must. With iOS 14, with iOS 15, with Android following suit, with the browsers blocking cookies, with laws like CCPA and GDPR, I think it is, or GDRP or whatever the
are over in Europe.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, it's and listen, I want to bring this up because this is something that I think, like, let's talk about the ethics behind the data too, and what data we have, right? And you're a business owner, right? So you have to be careful on what data you have or have access to or are using. So let's just open it up. So those are my 3. Those are my 3 musts that I wrote about a couple of days ago.
Yeah. So I would say what's interesting to me here is whether or not there's another must, which we'll talk about, but it seems that dealers have pretty much had one option up until now when it comes to how they structure. I'm our own CEO of Auto Lead Star. I think everyone knows that because we brought the webinar together, but just to introduce myself. And I think dealers have had kind of one option up until now, or maybe that's, I'm simplifying, but that if they want to do the best that they can do, the best that they can possibly do in all their different marketing customer touch points, they really have only the option of kind of like siloed best-in-class apps. And it seems to me that for the most part, if I'm a dealer, I have to pick vendor 1 to do this, my conversational piece. I need vendor 2 to do that. I can maybe use a portfolio of vendors on this other touch point, because maybe, like, I don't know, KBB has one interesting thing, then Trade Pending has another interesting thing, and then another, like, I'm rolling all these different programs up, and then I've got this mix, and it seems to me that what we're on the cusp of, and I think it's the 4th must in the thesis of Auto Lead Star, is that if you don't have connectivity between the silos, or again, in an ideal world, maybe you definitely connectivity, maybe sometimes also it's actually the same infrastructure. But if you don't have connectivity and orchestration of all of that, you are not getting the most out of your first party data and the investment you're making in what goes behind the brand, which is all those people that you're engaging over 10, 15 years. I mean, dealers have 100 years of records in some cases, right? They're probably the most extreme case. But many of them have 15 years of records and 30, and they have 200, 300,000 CRM records rich with data. They have things happening on their website every day. They have things happening in their ad networks, in their chat, in their this. If there is not connectivity and orchestration versus great single function, best in class apps, you're ultimately missing out. By the way, I'll credit someone, Alan Crutch, used that kind of, he like described that from Fuse. He described that to me recently. Like, he just sees all these like single function best in class apps, but when you want to leverage the data from them for a better whole, you fall off.
I was watching the AAAS summit that just concluded yesterday, and I was listening to a panel, and a gentleman from, I believe, Champ Automotive was asked, how many different vendors do you use? And he paused, like, oh, 19, I think, or at least. And that was just talking about digital retailing. And he's like, and they don't talk to each other, and we kind of duct tape it together, this and that. And that was sort of the crux of it, was like, why do we make this so complicated, right? And you know, I'll tell you this story. I get this all the time, guys. I get this all the time. Hey, I buy my Facebook through Agency A. Great. What else do you buy? Oh, I buy through here, 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 here. I'm going to bet that at least these 4 other ones are probably buying Facebook. Well, I don't know. Well, I don't, you know, I just buy a package A or a package number 1, it says. And that's okay. Well, let's just do me a favor. Go ask what's in that package. And man, 5-6 times they buy us, like in a month, just from 5 different vendors. And
no, and
it's what you got to organize.
And we'll kind of move the conversation a bit, but like when I see an email go out to a customer with one message, and then I, you know, probably a blast or like some middle level personalization, I then see them in some like ad audience that's totally different. And then when they come to the website, they see something totally different. That's not a coherent customer experience. And that's not what I always think about Facebook and Google in particular, you know, and you can maybe apply this to other areas, but like they're kind of moving forward very fast. And if you want to take advantage of them, you have to kind of play by the next level rules that they're setting in terms of, you know, onboarding data for them is really critical for them to use all the like advanced tools in their toolkit to give the customer the best experience and most relevant message. And you know, that's what you're always trying to get to. So, you know, I think that that's like a interesting segue a little bit into brand, because when we talk about brand, Bob, I think brand is one of the most sort of, you know, you brought that up as like one of your musts, right? The 3 musts. If I walk into a dealer right now and I say, hey, Mr. Dealer, we're going to do brand campaigns, the first thing that they say, and I'm going to speak about this from the data in a minute, but the first thing that they say is like, why? Like, really? Like, is that what you're going to do? Like, clicks that I would have gotten anyways, you're now going to charge me for? Like, anyways, people know me. I want to ask you, and if you want me to hop to the next slide, I'm happy to, but I want to ask you, like, what does brand really mean, and when should dealers care about it, and when do dealers have a brand, not have a brand? What is a digital brand versus maybe a market brand? Give us some insights into that when you think more deeply about that, in particular from like the Facebook Meta, you know, view of things.
Yeah, so you know, we have a very large platform, a very large number of platforms, right? You know, 231 million people a month, 18 plus are on our what we call family of apps and services. And the key stat, we have 178 million a day in the US that are on our apps, right? So we have scale. And what does that mean? Some will say, oh, I don't care about all those people. I just want to hone in on the one person that's going to buy a car at 3 o'clock today. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way, actually, right? And you have to market to people's mindset, not their tactics, right? And what do I mean by that? And you know, brand is the most underutilized strategy, I think, by automotive dealers, but not other businesses. Let me talk about Carvana for a second, right? And if anybody's ever joined their earnings calls or read their earnings reports, their one of their number one initiatives when they started out was to build a brand. They spent a fortune on marketing to do so. And if you follow Carvana marketing, it's about their experience, not about the cars that they have sitting in their vending machines, I guess they call that, right? And now that they've built the brand 3-4 years later, they actually can cut back on marketing. They don't need to market as much because the brand is built. So what does it mean for dealers? First of all, you always have to be on with brand. You always have to be advertising. And I'll go over these two stats and then another one I recently had, but 78% of people who are in market to buy a car in the next 90 days know what they want to buy. I know exactly what I'm getting. They just haven't chosen where they're going to buy it. And the other stat, that 94%, when we've had businesses run brand advertising. So actually, before I get to it, this is what when dealers say, I want more clicks, I want more VDP views, I want more leads. I'm like, great, run brand advertising. What? That doesn't make sense.
Okay,
No,
so
actually,
they ask bring brand to the table.
Yeah, it actually makes more sense than you putting more fuel in a signal that's probably maxed out. Right. And actually, I commented on a post yesterday on LinkedIn, like adding more money to marketing doesn't mean more sales, right? You could be adding more waste to your spend. So what is this 94% number? This 94% number is simply when businesses ran brand advertising at the same time that they ran their transactional advertising. So in the dealer space, VIN plus price or VIN plus offer. When they ran brand at the same time, 94% of those campaigns saw an increase in lower funnel conversions, your VDP views, your leads, right? Your website visits, your clicks, etc. We call it brand plus DR, plan plus direct response. And it makes complete sense because people have options. I have options to buy a Toyota Camry. I probably have 16 different options in my area. Right? The same exact car, it's even getting worse, by the way, the same exact cars that are being accessorized, the exact same, right? I have 16 different places to buy it from. Why should I choose you versus another? And it's not because you showed me the car in an ad with a price.
Right.
It's your brand. It's your portrayed customer, your advertised customer experience, right? What I'm going to expect. And listen, all the data said, I'll close with this. The number one reason why people visit a dealership's Facebook page, the number one reason is to see what people are saying about them. The number two reason is to get a feel of the type of experience they would have if they did business with them.
I think that's very powerful because look, we're all working in the automotive retail industry, which means fundamentally we are fighting for what are defined as community businesses, right? A dealership is the auto retail, and the reason I feel great being on this webinar and having this conversation with you is that auto retail is one of the last bastions, let's take the United States, in the United States, where you can build a career and get a job and grow. You don't have to have, you don't have to like luck into the best college and then get, some sort of computer engineering degree and go. You can actually still do it in a community, and you can succeed on your smarts and your merits. And so much of what is amazing about auto is that fact. And who is auto retail up against as a category? It's up against massive monopolies who can pour more money than God into brand and disruptive advertising, and they can come in any day that they want, and they can, nothing against Walmart, but they can Walmartify the auto industry if there weren't things that were keeping them out. And I think that dealers need to see themselves as mission driven if they want this industry to survive and definitely their own businesses to thrive, to adopt the techniques that give them that digital edge so that they can go up and compete against the big players who are trying to take them out. Moreover, vendors have to be thinking like, it's not good enough to be a niche cottage industry vendor that does cool stuff in auto because I was in the business and I know it. No, we must be better than Silicon Valley. We must compete with Silicon Valley in every single way, because Silicon Valley isn't necessarily looking to go and do the customizations and the work that it takes to really become auto, to understand the nuances of the industry, yet we can't afford not to be, or we're gonna lose. And so I think that, this messaging on brand is a really powerful insight because it's not necessarily what you think about when you just think about the cash business of like, how is every dollar going for that really, really instant performance ROI? No, but today's world, you can't survive on just a performance ROI approach. You have to have that more robust thinking. And I think that's a very important point here. And it leads me, Bob, to Messenger. I want to understand from you, when you think about the localness of a dealership, and maybe the advantage that they have over others who want to compete with them, and kind of that community element, I think Messenger is a very powerful and interesting concept. And I'd love you to tell us where you're at on that and what you're thinking, and kind of what's the thoughts around Messenger in particular when it comes to this discussion.
Yeah, well, listen, your marketing's only as good as the experience that the person is going to have. So if you have great marketing, but then you have a completely horrendous experience when it's at the time of purchase, whether that's in store or even online, over time, your marketing is just going to be considered fraud, right? So messaging is that customer experience. It's that post-marketing experience that a potential buyer or even current customer can have. And listen, when I say messaging, look, I've got Facebook Messenger, I've got Instagram Direct, and I got WhatsApp. But let's just talk about messaging in general, right? Whether it's text, right? Whether it's using a chat provider, whatever the scenario is. These stats, for those of you that can see it, they speak for themselves. And these actually are a couple years old, so it's even higher, right? But they speak for themselves. 65% would prefer to essentially have a conversation with you versus send you a lead form, right? And for anybody that knows Kevin Fry of Weiler Automotive, he just gave a presentation at AAAS yesterday, but has given this before. His dealerships are formless. He has known it's a bad experience. He's known this. So he said, you know what? Let's remove the bad experience. Let's remove the 5% close rate leads that we get, and let's replace it with chat. And you can see his results. He went from 25% setting appointment rate, and that's a bundled appointment rate, set to 59%. Right? And he's like, man, it's probably even higher today, and I know we can make it better. So it's just in a world, and by the way, let me get to his key stat. The largest demographic that can buy automobiles right now. Does anybody want to guess what that is?
Let's see if anyone's guessing.
It's not on a slide, but it's pretty obvious or pretty straight. The largest demographic that has the ability to buy the most cars is millennials.
Yeah, millennials grew up.
Do you think millennials are going to send a lead for him?
Ilana just bought a car, right, Ilana?
I did just buy a car, but in a very different market.
Yeah, well, millennials are growing up. That's all the buying power.
Yeah.
It's massive.
And do you think they're going to send a lead form? Right, fish where the fish are. Meet them where they want to be met. Right, they live on Messenger. They live on Instagram Direct. They live on WhatsApp. They use it for specific reasons.
Okay, so here I want to speak to the what did he call it, Ilana? David, was it David Long? The golden rule plus or something like that? Was that who it was? I think it was David Long.
David Long.
Yeah, David Long had the golden rule plus, which was basically connect with your customers the way they want to be connected with. That's the golden rule plus. And he really tries to imbue his team with that message so that they just react to what that customer wants, because people have different ways that they like to communicate, and there's no reason not to sit on the other end of all those channels and interact with them. I think the following, again, let's take brand. We see great results with brand. We also try to incorporate intelligence into how we invest in brand. For example, we've written some programs in Auto Lead Star to test the strength of a dealer's SEO, right? And we may modulate investment in brand digitally a little bit around how we're seeing their SEO perform, and we'll sometimes maybe up or down the spend on that, right? Or for example, we have done a lot around competitive analysis. We want to know if we search on 50 interesting queries that we're looking at. This is less Facebook, but just in general, we want to know, well, how competitive are they on organic? How competitive are they on paid? And we want to modulate, right? And I think that is, again, comes back to the theme that we're pushing this coming year in Auto Lead Star, which is if you can connect the data in and you can make the intelligence relevant, you can make decisions about investment that are much more savvy than like the average player who's just saying, whatever, I'll put $1,000 into it. I think something I've seen on Facebook that's been very interesting is that Facebook seems to do a good job of like finding the right, like brand isn't scattershot. It doesn't seem. It seems like it's used really well alongside, for example, phenomenal used in CPO performance. And I'm curious as to like, you know, behind the scenes, you know, that's probably deep product questions, but it just seems like Facebook has a good way to mix those, you know, when we go to market with Facebook in our own platform.
Well, you said something that was really important, which I know is our third topic. So you kind of teed it up, maybe without knowing it. But you said, you know, we turn up brand and turn.
Deck at least once, Bob.
We turn up brand and we turn down brand based off of a completely separate media platform. And what did that tell you? Well, media platforms work together. They don't work in a silo. Right, and search is by far the benefactor of intent that is created outside of search, right?
Right.
And when you create it, do it well. This is why you have to understand everything that's going on holistically, and not say, well, what is my search vendor doing, man? You could do better. Well, hold on a second. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's another vendor that their advertising isn't working very well, so it's not creating any intent. Thus, you know, driving intent. Based searches on search. So this is why it's so important to have a complete understanding of everything: traditional, digital, print, loyalty, prospect, all in one. All in one.
We're gonna get to the media mix is the third thing. I just think part of what we could take from this first session is that one, you know, Bob put up his 3 must-haves, and I added connectivity and orchestration of all of the whole concert, right, the whole orchestra. But I think that brand is not just eating into clicks or engagement you would have gotten otherwise. It's reinforcing in people who you are, what your values are, what your message, what your differentiation is. Critical piece. And I think we also highlighted the fact that, like, conversations are way more important now than ever before. So feeding people and giving people opportunities to converse, and then also just meeting them where they are and with what they want is what we're doing. Now, my challenge, or our challenge here, is as all of us, you know, as Auto Lead Star tries to be more and more of a hub, so we can make sure the email is consistent with the ads, which is consistent with the website, and as Facebook and, you know, going to Meta does what it does, privacy becomes a critical concern and an ethical concern, and one that has to concern all of us. I imagine all of us live in terror of data leaks, of all the hacker ransomware stuff that we see. I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings we have a month just to make sure, like, we're buttoned up on anything we could possibly button up on. And it goes beyond that of, like, again, treating people's data the way they would want it to be treated. And that brings us to that privacy first world that we're all talking about. And, you know, here, I think, Bob, it's really good for you to kind of give us the, you know, current state of thinking, and feel free to, if you want to move me through the slides, but where are you guys at? What are the things you're thinking about when it comes to that privacy first world, and how are you guys approaching that, and also being effective for the businesses that we're working for here, the dealers?
Yeah, I know people are going to smirk, right, and maybe call BS on this, but this is the truth. We're probably as conservative as it gets when it comes to how data is being managed in our platform. People might remember we used to have polk data in our system and all this detailed type of targeting from all these third parties, and we removed it a few years ago. Why did we remove it? Because we didn't want that data that somebody else owned, that someone else created, living in our system. Right now, that doesn't mean that if their access and the rights are had for that data, it can't be used, because it can be loaded up. We didn't want to house it, right? And at the end of the day, you know, this slide sums it all up of what is happening in our industry, right? We had iOS 14. Right, and now 15 or 15.1, I don't even know where we're at now. Android, if you read their dev docs, is following suit here with iOS 14, right, where they're not going to supply these mobile device IDs, these ad IDs, so you can do tracking. We've already got laws in place, right, cookie browsing, etc. And listen, here's something that I think it's really important for the industry, every industry, to understand. Facebook and Google, and I'm sure others, but I'll just talk about the 2 ones a lot of people talk about, have publicly stated that we have to model our online conversions. We have to create an algorithm that estimates what the online conversions are. Why? Because we don't have all of the data, because the data is being blocked. So it's important to understand, even when we lived in this world where we had all the data, we were making all these decisions off of pinpoint data. Well, the data is modeled because we don't have it. We don't have the data to be able to even display it. And that's important for people to understand, because and I'm not saying I'm not saying we need to move away from data to make decisions. It's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying, though, is the art piece of all of this that was really big and basically shrunk because data was the only way, is now getting bigger. And which is why we have to understand the big picture of everything that's going on and not these little individual silos.
Yeah, and I would say here, one of the misses right now is hooking up more signals. There's a lot of valuable signals out there in a dealer's technological and customer ecosystem, right? The customer data and the customer experience space that's not hooked up to a hub. So I'll give you an example. If I was to go survey how many of our dealers are onboarding Facebook data daily, onboarding CRM data, CRM or cleaned up CRM DMS data, cleaned up, good data. How many of our dealers in the industry, the 30,000, indies and franchise we have, are onboarding their data to Facebook 3-4 times a day? How many? It's a handful. Anyone who works with us, but it's a handful, right? And if you're not doing that, again, following the safety procedures that are required to make that acceptable from a privacy perspective, which is, it's very well laid out. It's not hard to do that if you do it at the standard. If you're not onboarding that data, you're not going to get the most out of what Facebook is able to deliver for you, and you're not giving them a signal that they could use. And I think that that's an important piece to talk about here. Your first party data becomes ever more your critical signal base, or your critical kind of working base, as other signals from the outside maybe are starting to get a little bit wobbly.
Listen, first party data has always been the best audiences you could ever remarket to. Always have been, which is probably why direct mail started however long ago, right? Now, digitally, it's been a challenge, right? And we've had the capabilities for a while, but it's very manual. Export, import, like you said, like it's very manual. So people got around it using other signals. It's too hard to do. I'll just buy data. I'll use all these. But man, like it's vital that every single dealership has a first party data always on strategy, and I should say strategies, because you've got parts and service, you've got retention for sales. I think at any given time, a dealership should be running 20 or so first party data campaigns, right? Utilizing the first party. And listen, you got exclusion audiences, right? You can exclude everyone that just bought from you, so you don't deliver advertising to them. So first party data.
Oh, our previous comment, you might want to have a whole exclusion flow, as in, meaning, excuse me, you might want to have a post-sale. Again, if I always think of auto as a recurring revenue business, right? It's like my business in SaaS, right? We build a relationship with a dealer decides to purchase our software, they pay us monthly, and we hope to work with them for years and years and years, right? And it's critical that we deliver for them, that way they stay with us, right? It's the same thing with selling cars. You have a setup fee, which is that initial purchase cost, right? They buy the car, so you make a little bit of money off that. And then the goal would be to have a lifetime relationship where they recur up on service, they recur up on other things, and ultimately they then do upgrades, which is the next car. And I think that, again, just like every SaaS technology company is investing as much money in their customer base for renewals and retention as they are for up funnel acquisition and conquest, it's the same thing for car dealers. Like, it shouldn't only start when we think a lease renewal is up. It's got to go on all the time if you really want to have that relationship and have your brand be the most prominent kind of thought in that person's mind when it comes to their transportation.
So one of my next musts or next, I don't know what I'm looking for, that I'm going to tackle is the concept of lifetime value.
It's all about
and
it.
I'm not first, and I'm not first to this by any means. This isn't Bob Lanham's concept and invention, right? This is something that's been around. Jonathan Dawson gave a great CPT News interview on lifetime value and segmenting your potential customers, and it's really quality over quantity. It was like, focus here because they're going to make you 2x more money, so on and so forth. So lifetime value could not be a measurement that is something that has to be figured out. And there was a clubhouse room the other day, and a gentleman by the name of Ben Hadley brought up lifetime value, and David Long was on it, and all these other, big guns, and they all agree, all the GMs agree, dealer principals, yeah, we totally need to do it, but then they move on, and it's just, and I think it's because it's hard, like it's hard. There's no systems for it yet, and you have to create a new compensation package. Like, how great would it be if I'm a salesperson and I sold 100 cars a month or whatever the number is, and I got a residual value every time that car went in the service? I would 100% act differently. I'd be writing more birthday cards, thank you cards, right? Like, you'd 100%, you wouldn't be transactional. You'd be more relationship focused.
And I would say here also, like, this is not rocket science, right? Loyalty is a well-known concept in the auto business and in any retail business. It's just that loyalty, some of the practices that are done for acquisition could also be done for loyalty. And I think that that's something that we're going to learn a lot more about over the next few years. I'll say the other thing that when it comes to data, one of the things that we think is critical and we identify is that the real-time reflection of your data is so important in all of the outbound channels, right? If you have a price change, you want that to be instantly updated everywhere. If you have a special offer that comes out, you want that everywhere. The email should reflect that, the advertising should reflect that, the website. And there's nothing that bothers us more, and we find this in almost every dealer we reach out to, where you go to one of their Google ads, or you go to one of their Facebook ads, or you go to an email of theirs, and you click in and there's an oops page, there's a 404, something's not up to date, it's a holiday, it's a go back to school ad that's running in, I don't know, towards the end of the school year when everyone's about to leave school and go on vacation. Now, it may be your ad's performing really well and you just like keeping it up because people click on it, but it's probably not. It's probably that you're not using connectivity and orchestration, which requires a lot of automation to make sure that everything is synced in real time as of right now. And I think that becomes, when you do it well, and you make sure that when an ad is running, and if an ad is running, it's spending at least $1 on it, right? Something's getting spent. If an ad is running, it's going to the right place. And if it's not going to the right place, definitely make sure you have an off ramp, or just get that ad down. Use the right technology setup, or use the right partner to make sure that happens. If you're running, if you have someone who browses a VDP and expresses interest in a very specific car and somehow converts and gets into your CRM, well, don't email them about a different car. Keep it in the family, or use some logic to know what car to email them about. There's no reason to blast them about stuff that's not relevant if they're looking at a truck and then suddenly you're showing them a really small compact, because that was what was in your blast that month. And this way of thinking, where someone can browse a VDP, they get the relevant offer, they open up a vehicle, an email, or a communication, or a direct communication that's relevant to what they were looking at or what they're interested in. And all that information is at the hands of the salesperson and in the hands of Facebook and Google to do the right advertising envelope. They're going to be more likely to buy a car and be happy with a coherent experience. So I just think that, adding to the story here before we get into the media mix of privacy and data leveraging, in particular first-party data, so you can really, use opt-in data rather than data that people might not want you to use. It's so powerful if you can orchestrate it. And putting a brain behind it that does the full customer data and experience for customers, that makes sure that your different silos are working in tandem or are connected, is what's going to get you the win in the end of the day in today's day and age.
But let's up level this, because this is fantastic. This is actually a perfect example of brand trust, right? So if I see price A on your website or in an ad, right? Let's start with the ad, and then I go to the website and I see price B for the exact same car, and then let's just pretend I submit a lead. Let's pretend I'm one of the 5% folks that submit a lead. I submit and then I'm getting different prices. Like, what the hell is going on? right? Like,
Yep.
talk about diminishing in your brand simply because you're not connecting your marketing, right, to your customer experience. That is your brand. So that, you know, everything you just talked about, while tactical, right, using data to drive marketing, the umbrella is brand, because your
Yeah.
customer experience plays a role in your brand, and this is pure customer experience.
100%. I think it's really on target. All connects. And this brings us to media mix as we're coming, you know, towards the tail end of the webinar. Bob, you know, you've been evangelizing this, for lack of a better term. You know, we talk a lot about that orchestration. We've talked about that. You know, this is a nice little illustration of all the different like touch points one would want or could want to orchestrate and put a machine, a brain, that little gear in the middle to make sure that your market data, your core data, your CRM data, your website, it's all working together in order to do a really good job. And you know, that's what I was referencing in the conversation about orchestration. You know, and sort of what we aspire to see happen to auto over the next few years. But Bob, you talked a lot about measurement, and I think that, you know, in this world of signal losses from the outside, growing importance of first-party data, dealers are always asking, because dealers want to know, how do I know that I'm getting ROI on my investment? And what should I do? What are the tea leaves I can read? And you've been talking a lot about media mix for the past, I don't know, as long as I've known you. You know, first time I met you in Detroit a couple years ago. What is it? What are you talking about here? You know, what do we need to be thinking about? And I'll kind of walk you through slides as you speak to it.
Yeah, so let me just tell you a quick little story on this. I mean, and I'm sure you might even had this example happen to you. You know, I've been in front of dealers in large rooms, small rooms, whatever, and you'd say, and my ad can do this, and it's dealer be like, well, you can't claim that your advertising is what sold the car. And then I'd say, well, but you're measuring me on that. Like, so you don't want me to claim it, but yet you're going to measure me on how my ad performed in your sales. And you know, it's counterintuitive. It's speaking out of both ends in many. So what is marketing mix modeling, or what I actually call media mix modeling, depending how you want to use it. But because we know that media platforms don't work in a silo, they work together with other media platforms to drive results. Well, marketing mix modeling will show you that, and if you do it even well enough, you'll even see your external factors that might play a role. And I was talking with the GM the other day, and that was a while ago actually, and I said, how were sales? I said, I bet F-150s were flying off the lot, and this is pre-pandemic actually. And he goes, no, we had a rough month. I'm like, oh, how's that, man? You were given like 15 grand under the hood. He's like, yeah, but Chevy was given 22, right? And that's an external factor that has to be played into the model to understand. You can have the best advertising in the world, but an external factor actually, you know, crushed what happened. You played in a role. Right. So what is marketing mix modeling? And, you know, in its simplistic form, and I presented this, and I'm still trying to hone it in and really simplify it, but you have to think about a recipe, or in this case, a chocolate cake, right? And there isn't one ingredient that is used to make.
That was it, chocolate cake specifically?
But I stole the chocolate cake example from one of our measurement guys. I was like, that's a perfect example. And who doesn't love chocolate cake, right? Like, chocolate cake is fantastic, but there isn't one ingredient. I use chicken marsala. I don't care, I don't care what it is, but there isn't one ingredient that makes the cake. There's multiple ingredients, right? You've got butter, and you got eggs, you got flour, so on and so forth. And it's the ingredients as a whole that makes the cake. And I joked, I'm like, and you can think of the taste as the performance, right? But the performance is your sales, but your performance is the ingredients you use. And some will say, well, I'm allergic to eggs. Well, shit, I'm allergic to traditional media, but nonetheless, right? So some would say, well, I need to replace it. Okay, let's replace. Well, and I popped up a screen. I don't know if people can see it, but it's alternatives to eggs. Right, and there's multiple alternative eggs, and I may say, listen, those 4 eggs cost me $10, right? Cost me 10. Well, I might want to replace it with something that's down there. I can't read it. My glasses are not strong enough, but might replace it with
mashed banana. I mean, flaxseed. It's phenomenal.
I might want to replace it with applesauce. That cost me $1.
Yeah.
Right. So I went from $4 to $1, and I might say this tastes just as good In fact, I actually like it better than when the eggs were in it. But you wouldn't know it until you switched it out. So if you switch on to a couple of the other slides, I won't go into detail, but at the end of the day, you have to understand your media mix. And go to the next one with the spreadsheet, right? At least right now, every dealer, and I've been talking about this for years, right? For anyone that's a dealer on the line, and you went to GM Academy, there's 3 main expenses they told you to review every month for your profitability: payroll, advertising and marketing, and your floor plan, your inventory. And I can't tell you how many dealers or GMs I've gone up to. I'm like, what's your payroll? Oh, it's $2,632,000. What's your floor plan? Oh man, I'm getting the best rates right now. I'm able to buy cars. How much you spend on advertising and marketing? I have no idea. I have somebody else that does it for me. Really? I mean, you don't have a spreadsheet that you could easily go to understand exactly because what you buy and how you buy your second largest expense clearly plays a role in your profitability. At the very least, put it all down. Put it on a spreadsheet and monitor it, and just total up your costs, divided by sales. You got your cost per car sold. You flip to the next slide. Vendor comes in and says, man, I am the best vendor in the world. You have to buy me. Great. That was a great sales point. You're absolutely right. So then you have to say to yourself, is this an add-on? Am I going to increase my costs? Or am I going to replace it with something else, right? So if you increase your cost and say, okay, at the very least, then if this best leads ever company costs me $8,000 a month, you have to at least make $8,000 more on profit to just break even with this new company, right? Well, if you sold less cars, guess what happens? You just spent more money for less, right? Flip to the next, right? But what if it worked? You're like, man, I spent more and I sold more. Great, keep it. You should keep this in the mix. And finally, the last one, and I don't know if you guys are sending this out or not, or if people take it screen, but the last one is, okay, it cost me $8,000, and I pitched this because I know we can replace other media platforms and perform better, if not perform the same, if not better than. But I cost less. So what if the best leads ever says $8,000, but you don't have to spend as much on TV, you don't have to spend as much on another vendor, whatever the scenario is. This is called replacement. I brought in a new vendor to replace other vendors at a cheaper cost, and I got more out of it, right? But nobody knows this. There's a lead count. Well, lead count isn't a metric. Right? It doesn't tell you how your entire media and marketing. Let's talk about OTT, the biggest thing to hit the industry of late. I sold OTT back in 2009. Like it's not new, right? But let's talk about OTT CTV right now. Most of it's unclickable. It runs on a 70-inch screen TV. And that's the coolness of it. Okay, well, how do you measure it? Well, like TV. Well, didn't you just have this huge initiative not to buy TV because you couldn't measure it and you didn't know if it was performing for you? Like, come on. We have to get smarter. Marketing mix modeling, simply listing everything you're buying and tracking it back to sales, instantly you're going to be smarter.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. We're going to shift into questions in 1 minute because we're almost at the end of the hour. But it's a elegant, or it's a simple yet critical way to get some insight into the changes that you make and the impact that they have. Of course, like any experiment, you have to control for certain variables, and you can't move too much at once, or the whole thing becomes complicated to really follow. You have to understand also sometimes external market effects, and I just think like it's part of this like core discipline that you need in order to just have a handle on the directionality of what you're doing, and that's the insight it gives you.
There's a great quote on that. Let me just tell you this really great quote. There's a great quote. It's from a statistician, someone that's far smarter than me, probably at your level. And the statistician, this is like 100 years old, right? I think the guy's probably been dead for 100 years. And it was all about mathematical modeling, right? The term model, right? Which online conversions are modeled now. Why? Because we don't have the data. So here's where I'm going. His quote is, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And that's sort of the point. You have to start aggregating everything so you can start to understand what is going on with your business versus just creating benchmarks to make yourself feel better that it's working for you. That's all we've done as an industry. And that's all we, let's just create a benchmark. But 1% is a great click-through rate. So do, like,
Right.
so do.
Right. 100%. No, I totally get that. You know, I think also the amazing thing that you could do now in the digital world we're in is you can kind of speed up the sensor to solution like loop close. So like things that happen, if you know how to monitor, you can really see, you could see changes quickly often. And you don't necessarily need to wait as long. And again, those of us who are like trying to write algorithms for you know, marketing and optimization, we're often dealing in an environment that starts very statistically poor, is in you have very small sample sizes, and then it gets rich over time, and you can get a lot more certain. So what you use is models, meaning you take risks on signals and bet on them early, but still keep enough things behind the scenes testing to see if you were wrong. And I think that's exactly like what you're pointing to here. Like having something like this over time probably gives you a good indication of what's moving the needle and what's not moving the needle, and that's what we need to be doing. And you know, we all need to be working with partners who are able to do that. Okay, Bob, that was a great way to end. By the way, I looked up the guys who spoke. His name was George Box. It's attributed to him. He only passed away in 2013, so it's not 100 years. Shockingly, recent. You could have bumped into him in one of your trips to England.
Could have reached out to him.
Exactly. Credit to him. Great. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Bob. It's really such a pleasure to talk with you. The chemistry that you bring to the table is just fantastic, and I always learn so much. I really appreciate it. We're going to open it for questions. Ilana, if you're still with us, possibly. You there?
Yes, I'm here.
Right.
Wake up, Ilana, wake up.
Ilana's always awake. That's the way it is. So, Ilana, any questions that came in that you want us to address? We unfortunately don't have that much time, but we'll follow up with people who we didn't get to offline. But let's get to at least one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the most practical one that came in that we'll start with is how do you what advice would you give to a dealer who hasn't been focusing on first party data? Where should they start? What should they be doing? So let's talk about that a little bit, and then hopefully we'll have time for one more question.
Bob, what would you say if you know, first party data hasn't really been the priority? What would be the right step for a dealer?
Yeah, dip your toes, right? Think about maybe 2 audience segments: sold not service, lease maturity, right? Think of maybe just 2 segments that you'd want to pull out of your database, right? And create very specific marketing against. And either, I'll just say this, either execute it yourself on Facebook or work with a partner like Auto Lead Star who can execute it on your behalf. But just start with a couple of databases, just a couple, right? You don't need to dive in with 20 or 50 and start organizing data. Just pick 2, create very relevant messaging that talks exactly to that database because you know what you want to talk to them about. And here's what you're going to learn. At the very least on our platform, CRM remarketing is very efficient. For every 100 people in a database, I swear it costs like $10 to target them 4 times a month. It's very efficient. And the ROI when you match back to sales, right, or repair orders is through the roof, right? And that's what you got to measure back on, right, is what is my return? And it's not a click. We're not looking at just trying to drive clicks from we want them to be returning customers or first-time customers because we know something about that database. So that would be my suggestion. Just dip your toe in, pick 2 audiences, and run with it.
Yeah, we can attest to that. CRM retargeting is unbelievable, and I totally agree with that approach. Andrew Walzer, who's who we work with a lot, and I always hear him in meetings saying like, crawl, walk, run. Yeah, and I think that's definitely the way to do it. You crawl, you walk, then you run. And as Bob said, that's the way to get started. Ilana, one quick one in the last minute here.
Yes, and hopefully we can fit this into 1 minute, but we do have a couple questions about data connectivity and what that looks like in automotive when data is so segmented and there might not be access to certain integrations and pulling that together. So any advice on that We could wrap after that.
I'll start and then Bob will finish off here, and then I'll thank Bob and we'll close. One, if vendors don't have APIs, you're already starting from a bad place. If they do have APIs, or they make public the different things they do on the technological level, like, you know, when someone chats and a conversion happens, does someone tell someone that happened, right? Again, in the environment that's that moment on the web, which all the different players can see and read and see transparently technologically, you're in a bad spot. And what you ultimately need is a partner. There's several, you know, who you could find, but partners who can either pick up the signals that vendors are willingly exposing, replace the vendor if they don't expose a signal, or find the signal even if the vendor didn't mean for it to come out, pull all that into one view, and then say, oh, that was that person who just filled out something on that car, who was on the website yesterday, who bought a car in 2017, because I know that from another data source I'm looking at, who probably is up for a lease, and hey, here's the payments that they were giving. Let's now trigger an email in 3 weeks, because why? We saw that they like to get involved every couple of weeks, and bam, the email's auto-created, loaded up, and launched. It's very difficult to do, and that's where the industry is going. You know, there's lots of vendors that are out there, you know, like us, trying to make that happen. But connectivity, again, crawl, walk, run. Try to understand who you have in your digital environment, whose data is visible, they're making it transparent, and then who's your hub that's orchestrating it. It's a slow long haul, but it's critical. That is what will enable you to be really, really good in the future if you put that hard work in. Bob, what's your take on that?
Yeah, to sum up exactly what you just said, ask your vendor if they're connected to your CRM, or they have the ability to be connected to your CRM, because there are many vendors that have built off of APIs to be able to extract databases from your CRM and react against it or market against it. So if you don't want to do it manually, which you can export, import, but there are many vendors like AutoLeadStar that have connected the CRMs to be able to pull out that data and then automatically run a Facebook campaign on it and keep it running, by the way, while updating the database monthly. So once it's connected, you can just keep it going.
And the emails and reacting to an appointment, and it's kind of like we went from an environment where, like, yeah, I know, if you think like a Star Wars movie when they're flying through like those crazy scenes, they're blasting everything left and right, like manually. Like, no, we're at the point where if you don't have a computer kind of and automation's running a lot of that, you start to miss things and little asteroids start hitting your rocket ship. On that sci-fi nerd note, we're going to end this with this webinar. Bob, when it comes to learning about you, I would recommend everyone right now to go and follow Bob on LinkedIn, Bob Lanham. It is definitely an education every single day, or every single couple days, how often he posts, you know, whenever he posts, and follow what he's writing about. I hope to hear more about lifetime value coming up soon. Sounds like you're getting ready to kind of drop some good words on that. And thank you everyone who attended. We really appreciate it. We know it's a lot of your time, and we hope you learned something and enjoyed it. And we look forward to more feedback, and we'll follow up with any questions off grid. Thanks everybody. So appreciative. Okay, we're in the after moment here. Ilana, you want to end the broadcast for me? Because I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, sure.
Everyone's dropping off fast, but hi everyone. Sorry for the tech difficulties there.
I'm actually not sure how to end it. I think you actually have to X out of it.
Oh man, hang on.
Yeah. I think you have to, I don't anyway. Thanks, Bob.
Well, locks it out.
It was great. We'll follow up with you afterwards once we figure out how to end this broadcast. We might be here for hours. Thanks.
Bye.